Hi everyone and welcome. Today I'm going to show you all the series that in one point of my life I have started them, then I really enjoyed them, maybe I even picked up the sequel, but then I somehow stopped and I didn't really finish the series. Now in my last video I talked about series that I've started and now I'm just waiting for the sequel, and it's definitely the author's fault that I haven't continued with their series. However, in this video that's not really the case. It's definitely my fault that I haven't finished the series for a lot of these, because in a lot of cases the series is actually finished, the author has done their job, now it's up to me to do my job, and in other cases at the very least the sequel or the book that I need to pick up next is already out. So I don't really have an excuse to not get into these, because like I said, these are not series that I want to DNF, these are definitely series that I want to continue in. Now, I really like to make these kinds of lists, first of all for myself, so I can see these are the series that you need to finish, that you can finish, please prioritize these, but also to ask some help from all of you. Because this series list has gotten a little bit out of control and I don't really know where I should start next. So if you see a series on the list that you think is really good and that I should prioritize, or that you just want to know more of, then definitely let me know, and then I know what I can put on my May TBR. Now, most of these series are definitely fantasy series, but I do have two sci-fi ones that I want to start with. The first one is Dune, of course, by Frank Herbert. I read the first one, this one, last year in summer, July or August, and I actually vlogged my experience. And at that point, I wasn't really committing myself to the entire series. If I liked the first book, but I wasn't really intrigued, that was going to be the end of that tale. However, I really enjoyed Dune, and I definitely want to read at least the original 3 books, because I think that that's somewhat of a trilogy. I've heard that after that it really goes out there, and that's not for everyone. So I'm just going to see how I like the original trilogy, and if I want to continue, that's fine, but at least those 2 other books I need to get to, and I hope that I can get to them this year, because I have heard that those read pretty fast. Now, the next series is Pierce Brown's Red Rising series. I don't really know how the second trilogy is called, but I read Iron Gold last year. I was a bit disappointed by that one. I really enjoyed the original Red Rising trilogy. I think the multiple POVs that he switched to in Iron Gold was not to my liking. I don't think that it was handled that well, so I didn't really like it. However, I have heard that this one, Dark Age, is really good and it gets into grimdark territory, which I'm always open for, I'm always excited for, so yes, I definitely need to get to this one. And I think that then I'm again waiting for the sequel. I think that Pierce Brown is currently working on the 3rd and final book of this trilogy, if I'm not mistaken. So another reason, I only need to read 1 book in this series and then I'm done for now. So I think that I might listen to the audiobook next month, but I've been saying that for a couple of months now, so we will see. And then on to the fantasy series. And here I decided to make 2 small lists in this video. So first of all, series that are not finished yet, where the author is still working on the conclusion or on the next sequel. And then series that are completely finished. I could basically finish all of these if I want to. I don't know why I wanted to make that distinction, I just wanted to have 2 lists, I suppose. But we're going to start with the series that are not finished yet. And the first one here is a series that is going to be finished this year, in a couple of months even, so this is very high on my priority list to continue reading, especially because I absolutely love it. And that is the Dandelion Dynasty by Ken Liu. So I recently finished The Wall of Storms, which is the second book, and this one was even better than the first one, Grace of Kings, which is a surprise to me because I already really enjoyed Grace of Kings. This series comes closest to what I have felt when I read A Song of Ice and Fire. And even though it's not exactly the same, it's actually very different in certain points, but I think if you like A Song of Ice and Fire and the feeling of that and how big the story actually feels, I think that you will enjoy this series as well. So the 3rd book is one that's now very high on my priority list to read, and then the 4th and final book will get published in the upcoming weeks, or upcoming months at the very least. So yes, I want to actually read that new release on the day of its release. So yes, very high on my priority list to read that 3rd book, and then wait for the last and final sequel. Then a series that I have barely started, but I will be reading, of course, over the course of 2022, because I am hosting a read-along for it, and that is Stormlight Archive by Sanderson. So I'm currently like 1/4 into the 1st book, but I will be finishing this one in April, and then, like I said, read book 2, 3, and 4 in the course of 2022, and then be ready for that 5th and final book of the original arc in Stormlight Archive. I do know that the books will be, or the series will be 10 books long in total, but those first 5 books will conclude 1 arc. So that's what I'm committing myself to at this point. If I like it enough, I will then jump into the 2nd arc once the 6th book is published. For now, I do have some small issues with it, which I will discuss in a spoiler-filled vlog and in our spoiler-filled discussion, of course, but I am liking it enough that I am quite excited to continue with it, even though I do have those small issues. But these are very big books and they do read rather quickly, so that's always a plus. Then we have the Akatar series by Sarah J. Maas. So I have read this second book, A Court of Mist and Fury, and now I need to read the third book to finish the trilogy, but then there's also a fourth book which I think starts a new trilogy and also a novella in the same world. And I do want to read these three and then wait for the sequel if I like the books enough. Now, this is just the type of series that you don't really need to read back to back. It's okay if you leave long breaks in between, because they're not that dense, they're not that difficult, and you will not forget important information if you don't pick them up back to back. So I really like that. These read extremely fast, and I especially like picking them up when I'm sick and I'm looking for a comfort read. So yes, I will definitely be finishing this series, but I don't really know when, because they're not that high on my priority list. Then I have a series where 2 books are out at the moment, and I have read the first one, so if I read the second one, I'm immediately up to speed and I'm waiting for the sequel. And that is Master Artificer by Justin T. Call. So this is the second book, this is the one that's on my TBR. The first book is Master of Sorrows. Now, Master of Sorrows I read as a buddy read with Joanna Sousa, and I absolutely loved the buddy read. However, I wasn't really blown away by the book. It was sold to me as grimdark, where we are following the Chosen One, but he's destined to become evil. That sounded extremely intriguing. However, the first book was not grimdark. It was not. It felt young at times, like it was a crossover between YA maybe and adult, which is absolutely fine, but if you're expecting grimdark, that's a little bit off the mark, I suppose. And the main character was often compared to Fitz of the Farseer trilogy. However, I didn't think that he came at the same level as Fitz, so at the same time there I was slightly disappointed. However, I have heard from a couple of people that this second book is a lot better, that it turns dark pretty quickly, and so that leaves me quite excited. And I think that I will buddy read this again with Joanna Sousa, so at the very least, I will really enjoy that buddy read, and I think after finishing the second book, I will decide if I want to continue with this series or not. And then we have the 2 last series that are not finished yet by the author, and then after that we get to a big pile of series that are completely finished and that I could finish if I want to. So the first one of the 2 last ones, this is a trilogy of novellas, and the first one is called The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Niveau. Now, I've come to the conclusion that I do like novellas, but it needs to be a very specific type, and this one definitely fits that description. I loved how fairy tale-esque this felt, and I do think that the third and final novella in this trilogy will come out later this year. So I need to get to the sequel quite fast. However, the sequel is very expensive. For a book that I will finish in 2 hours, probably 20 euros is a bit much, so it's on my Amazon wishlist, and when I see that it goes down in price, I will immediately purchase it. So I'm watching every day and waiting until that happens. But yes, I'm very much anticipating that second one and then waiting for that release, because this is one of the few novellas that I gave 5 stars. So my expectations for the second one are quite high. And then we have the Rook and Rose trilogy. So this is written by an author duo called M.A. Carey, and I really like the first one, The Mask of Mirrors. Now, the second one came out in December of 2021, and that's around the time when I picked up this first one, so I can read it. And I also think that this author duo is currently either finished or still working on a third book, but it will get published quite soon, so I need to make work of this series. I loved the Venetian setting, I loved the main character, I loved the family drama, the political intrigue, but something that I always find very important as well, I really liked the secondary characters, and I thought that they were fleshed out a lot. So, need to pick up the second one. But here we have the same problem as with the trilogy of novellas. I can't find the second one in this height. So the paperbacks that I find are longer, and I just want to have all of them in the same height because I'm superficial like that. If I can have a trilogy that matches, why would I not do that? So yes, again, it depends on when I can find this specific height, and then I will jump into that second book ASAP. And now on to the list of series that are completely finished, are completely published, and I can finish them this year if I want to. Now, the first entry to this list is already pretty shameful to talk about, because this one has been on all of my ongoing series lists, and since the first time that I included it over a year ago, I haven't made any progress, and that is the Night Runner series by Lynn Llewellyn. So Shadow's Return is the 4th book, and this is the one that I need to read next. In this one, we follow a gay spy duo, Alec and Sergel, and I really love those 2 main characters. However, the 3rd book I thought was awful. I hate read it all the way through. I was listening to it on audiobook. I think if I wasn't listening to it on audiobook, I would have DNF'd it. However, I always hear that that's the worst book in the series, even from people who absolutely love that series, and that the 4th book is so good that I need to get to it. So at the very least, my goal for this year is to read that 4th book and then decide if I want to continue. I own the entire series, by the way, which I think is over 10 books, so at the very least, I should give it one last try. Then a series that I recently started and will definitely continue. I do think that I will finish the trilogy this year and pretty soon as well. And that is Khashil's Daughter by Jaclyn Carey. So this is the first book of the Phaedra trilogy. I will be reading the second book either this month or next month, and then the third one will probably follow very closely. This is one of my favorite firsts in a series, and I think that this series has potential to become one of my all-time favorites. So yes, this one I will finish, I know. You don't need to tell me that I need to finish it in the comments, that it needs to be high priority. It is. If you're interested in the premise, I do have a completely spoiler-free review for this first book, and I will link that in the cards down below. Then next, again, a series that I think I'm on track with. I'm making good progress every month, and that is The First Law Universe by Joe Abercrombie. So Red Country is the next book that I'm going to read. I'm actually going to read it this month. I'm reading one book per month of this series, and I'm then discussing it together with Steve and Jose in a live discussion, which is a lot of fun, and this definitely helps me continue to make progress in a series. If I know that there's going to be a discussion, I'm immediately more excited. So yes, this is the third standalone in this universe. After this, I will have to read the short stories collection, and then I can jump into the final trilogy, which is the Age of Madness trilogy. So for this one, I'm quite proud. I'm on track. The next one is, again, one that's, yeah, this one is bad. And that is The Bitter Twins by Jen Williams. So this is the second book in the Winnowing Flame trilogy. I read the first one in 2020, I would say, and I really liked that. That was The Ninth Reign, and it was actually in my top 10 books of 2021 list, of 2020 list. So I don't really know why I haven't picked up the second one, The Bitter Twins. It's just a trilogy. I should have finished it by now. I was one of the first people who, after Elliot Brooks recommended this trilogy, picked it up. I think that I picked it up right after her recommendation video of The Ninth Reign. And then I just didn't touch the series for 2 years. So yes, The Bitter Twins is very high on my TBR. At the very least, for 2022, I want to read this second book. And maybe I will have to reread the first one, because a lot of time has passed and that first one wasn't too easy to understand. So not doing that well for this one. Now, the next series is one that I will be finishing this year, and after a very long hiatus for almost a year, I finally read the third book, so now I just need to read the fourth one and continue again. And that is the Song of the Shattered Sand series by Bradley P. Bolio. So I do think that this is the next one that I need to read, Beneath the Twisted Trees. This is a 6-book long series, but it has a bunch of novellas in between that I also want to read, just because I really like the series. So I will first read the original series and then go into all of the novellas. This is a desert-based fantasy. You have a revenge plot where Shada is on a mission basically to find out why her mother was murdered by these 12 immortal kings. These 12 immortal kings were given their power by the desert gods, and you come to understand a lot about these gods, a lot about the lore, a lot about maybe lies that were told throughout history, and Shada discovers this as well, of course. This is such a good series. The first book I already really enjoyed, but that second book really opened up the world. It added a lot of political intrigue, and then the third one was even better. So I cannot wait to finally pick up the fourth book. And like I said, I do want to finish at least the original series this year, and I hope that in summer I can really make good progress in this series. Then we have a series where I really enjoyed the first book. And then the second one was a disappointment, so I have put the second one on pause, but I still want to continue. And that is the Dragons of Terra trilogy by Brian Nesland. So the first one, which I think was Exile, Blood of an Exile, yes, I really enjoyed that one. I thought that that was perfect fantasy for people who are new to fantasy. I thought that it had the perfect mix of humor, but also serious moments. I really enjoyed the characters. I liked the plot. It was quite unique, I think. And so everything just fit together. This second one is dragging a lot. I think I'm a little bit over halfway through. You can't see this, but I'm here at this point. And I was listening to this one on audiobook and I noticed that I was losing my attention. That is something that never happens. Usually when I'm listening to an audiobook, I'm all for it. I hear everything, I understand every sentence. I'm not somebody who's doing a lot of things in between and then just that's on the background. No, I'm really listening to that audiobook. That was not the case here, and that's a very bad sign. So if I continue, at the very least, I will pick it up physically to really focus myself and force myself to keep my eyes on the story. But I don't know. This was a huge disappointment. Even after I've heard from a lot of people that the second book drags on and that the third one is amazing, I was still disappointed by this one because I thought, yeah, I like slow books, so it will be fine. It's dragging. However, since I have heard that the third book is amazing, I will definitely continue and finish this one and then jump into that third book, which I still think that I will absolutely love. Then, of course, this is a very big series. I don't plan to finish the series this year, but I am on a schedule, so at least there's that. And that is Malazan Book of the Fallen by Stephen Erikson, of course. This is the first book, Gardens of the Moon. I've just finished That House Gates, the second book, and I have joined a read-along together with Steve, who is hosting this, and we are reading one book every 2 months. So yes, I will be making progress. I have loved these 2 books. The second one was a bit heavy on military fantasy, so I do think that maybe something could have been edited there. But all in all, loving the characters, loving this world, loving Stephen Erikson's writing style. So yes, I'm pretty confident that I will be finishing this series, but I need to take my time. And I think that one book every 2 months is perfect because you don't want to have too long breaks, because this is a very dense series, there is a lot of information, and you don't want to lose that information by taking too long breaks. But at the same time, reading them back to back would be too much. So one every 2 months, perfect. Next up, a series that I recently started. I actually finished the first book last week, and that is the Broken Empire Trilogy by Mark Lawrence. This is the first book, Prince of Thorns, in which we meet our main character, Jorge, who is a very, very bad boy. Now, this is grimdark, of course, but it's not as grimdark as I would have expected. And part of it is that we have a lot of gory situations, but most of it is very superficial, and we don't really dive very deep into what that means for the people who are experiencing this. So one of the complaints that I have for this first book is that it's very fast-paced. I do like to have a slower book where we dive deeper into all of these things that are happening, but I liked it enough, and I think that this is different enough from everything else that I've read that I definitely want to continue. And I have heard that the series gets better after this first book, so that's quite exciting. Then we have a series that I will finish either this month or next month, because it's just a duology. And that is the Wildwood Dancing Duology by Juliette Merlier, one of my favorite authors of all time. This is the second book, so the one that I will be reading next, Sybil's Secret. Now, this is a fairy tale retelling, at least the first one was, and I absolutely loved it. It was so atmospheric, so I now want to read the second one, of course. This is YA. It's one of the few YA books that Juliette Merlier has written, but I like it just as much as her adult works, and what more is there to say? Juliette Merlier, if you want nature-based magic, if you want to have that fairy tale-esque atmosphere, beautiful prose, you need to read her. I'm always advocating for people to pick up Juliette Merlier and give her a chance. So if I finish this one, I will immediately jump into another series by her. I want to always have a Juliette Merlier book on my TBR, so finishing this one will not decrease the amount of series that I'm currently in, but I will have a nice time. Then, a series that I have been reading for such a long time, and this last book I think I've been reading for over 6 months at this point. And that is The Raven's Shadow Trilogy by Anthony Ryan. This is the last book, Queen of Fire, and this one, oh my. So, the first book, Bloodsong, one of my favorite books of all time. Grimdark, one of my favorite characters of all time, Valen. The second book, Tower Lord, was amazing. This is an author who went from one POV in Bloodsong to multiple POVs in Tower Lord, and he executed it perfectly. And then I went into this third book, and my hopes were high. This has been a disappointment, and I'm currently this far in, and like I said, I've been reading this book for 6 months, and I think that I haven't touched it for the last 2 at the very least. This is very high on my priority list to finally finish this series, because I still love these characters, and I still want to know what is happening with all of these characters and what is going to happen with the main plot. And more importantly, I love Anthony Ryan's writing style. I think that this is an author who has true talent and who can really characterize his characters to an extent that I really enjoy reading. And I want to continue with his works, but he has a duology set in the same world with some of the same characters that I want to jump into next, so I need to finish this book, and I need to finish it soon so I can get to an Anthony Ryan book that I will actually enjoy. So these are all of the series that I'm currently in the middle of. I do hope that I haven't forgotten one, because this is what always happens once I finish the video, I've edited everything, then I come to the conclusion, oh no, that series or that book I've forgotten. So let's hope that that didn't happen this time. Like I said before, if you want me to prioritize one of these series because you think that I will absolutely love the next one, let me know in the comments down below. And also, don't be ashamed, let me know all of the series that you're in the middle of that you could finish if you want to, so that I don't feel as alone as I do feel right now. If you want to know all of the series that I'm waiting for the sequel and that I am on track, it's not my fault, you can watch this video next. And as always, of course, I do hope that you enjoyed this video, and see you next time. Bye!